So when you're already a junior developer and you want to increase your skills to hopefully attain the rank of senior one day, you're working on, as you said, becoming more pragmatic, expanding that toolkit and thinking more in a broader sense and bringing in other views and so forth. But what would you recommend for folks to make sure they stay on top of Swift or Swift UI or iOS or UIKit and Apple's devices? They're always changing, always adding new things, new features, new ways of working. What would your suggestions be for someone who really wants to keep on top of this new information?
Right. So yeah, it's interesting because we talked earlier about like kind of being open-minded and looking not only at Swift but looking at other platforms and just in general like being curious. And I think it's the same thing here is that even if you were just looking at the Apple platform, it's not standing still, right? Like it's moving at a rapid pace. And every WWDC we get a huge influx of new APIs, new platforms, technologies, even like big paradigm shifts like Swift UI and Combine. So yeah, I think setting aside time for that is incredibly important because we can't treat our jobs and our skill sets and the tools we work with as static. There's some people who would like it to be that way, who kind of feel like things are moving too fast. And you could argue that point. You could argue that things are moving too fast and that, you can't launch an app that was made 2 years ago now on a modern iPhone because it's not going to work anymore because all the APIs changed, right? You can argue that that's a problem as well, but it's the reality we live in, right? That's the way things are going to work. So we have to treat our jobs and the tools we work with as incredibly dynamic, and we have to become dynamic as well. We have to be prepared to relearn and rechange. And sometimes, again, it's painful. If you've been a UIKit developer now for 10 years, and you're used to that, you feel like an expert. Someone asks you to build an app, you go and build that app. You know the SDK in and out. It is painful to become a beginner again. For some people, love it. I love it. I'm really excited about like Swift UI, for example. I've been really loving to learn it, but it can also be painful, especially when you feel like you don't have the time. So I think making that time is so incredibly important to set aside time and treat it as a normal part of your work to learn new things, because it is, whether you like it or not, learning new APIs, tools, and frameworks that come out are part of your job if you're an Apple platforms developer, because Apple are not going to wait for you. They're not going to say, "Oh, John is not ready yet. Let's just hold off Swift UI for 2 more years." That's not going to happen. So I think treating it as a proper part of your job, because so many companies, I feel like, treat learning new technologies as some kind of like optional thing or thing that developers do for fun. It's kind of like, let's give the developers a hack day. That's going to be a fun treat for them. Then they can learn new things there. I don't think it should be treated that way. I think it should be treated as a proper part of our work, our work time every week to dedicate some time for learning. It might just be 1 hour. It might just be half a day or something. Whatever you can spare. I think it's important to spare that time to keep learning all the time.
Right. Certainly no one wants to feel that fear of missing out or left behind. Because if you're doing UIKit full time and you haven't got any time left, you're just too tired or too busy to look at Swift UI, it can really feel like, oh no, I'm the new Objective-C. I'm being left behind, and you're not, because of course there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of UIKit developers out there in the world. But it can feel like the cool new thing on the block is what we should be doing, and spending more time studying, and trying to carve out some time is hard.
It is, yeah, and it all comes down to like having that long-term look at things, right? Like you're saying, you don't have to immediately learn everything. That's not what it is. UIKit is not deprecated. AppKit is not deprecated, right? You can keep using them probably for years. So we're not talking about you need to change things tomorrow. We're not talking about you have to drop everything that you're doing and just learn Swift UI and just, go all in on that. And I think sometimes we tend to think too binary about these things, right? It's either or. It's either UIKit or it's Swift UI. And that's so far from the truth, especially with Swift UI, because you can mix and match as much as you want, right? Which is a great thing about it. But in general, I would say, treat it as a marathon, as a long-term game, right? Like it's better, I think, to dedicate an hour or two for learning every week. It can be, for example, your last 2 hours of working on a Friday, or maybe you start your Monday morning with 2 hours of learning to kind of get in the groove, right? Whatever fits for you or fits your schedule, but it's better, I think, to schedule the small amounts of hours every week rather than waiting for 3 years and then you have to drop everything for 2 months just to learn the new API, right? I think it's better to do that continuous long-term learning over time rather than kind of just having to do those big, like abrupt things.
Right.